Hey, what's up, y'all? We are back with more FatherShift content for you. And today, we're diving into a topic that every dad needs to know about, but not every dad is aware of it. And it's how to build a legacy relationship with your son. But before we dive in, let me introduce us. My name is Avery Baker. The other guy on the screen, that's my pops, Brian. And we would love if you would like this video and subscribe to this channel so that you can see all the latest FatherShift content when it drops. Pops, how you doing today, man?
I'm good, bro. How are you, man? Looking forward to the conversation.
Absolutely. I'm doing well too. I'm doing well. So let me reiterate. Today we're going to have a conversation that will help you dads become the hero that your son needs. And one of the reasons that we created a group coaching program for fathers is because dads need the resources to build their capacity in the role of fatherhood. And there's a ton of resources and even research out there to help mothers build their capacities, but the resources for fathers pale in comparison. So, who better to talk about a father and son relationship than a father and a son that have been through those storms together?
Yep.
And let me just reiterate this: fathers, you are your son's heroes,
hmm
and that should not be taken lightly. And we're here to just guide you and walk with you through that journey. So let's dive in to today's topic because there are four things that you can do today to help you give the confidence to show up better for your sons. All right. So let's dive into the four things, Pops. The
Yep.
first one is getting to know your story. Now,
Mm.
that sounds a little self explanatory, but share with the fathers that don't understand this. Why is it important to get to know your story?
Yeah, absolutely. It's very, very difficult to show up for somebody else if you don't know how to show up for yourself. So getting to know your story, simply means that, you're the author of your own story. One of the things about getting to know your story is you have to be brutally honest. It's a difficult thing to do. And it was something that I needed to learn how to do as a father. And it wasn't until I did that I felt like I was the dad that I was meant to be. Let me give a little context around this. The way that it came to my attention that I was struggling with who I was as a person was right after the loss of my father. I lost my father and my brother 1 year to the day apart, and I lost a big part of myself at that point in time. And I realized shortly after that I was just drifting. And I really didn't know who I was because I really wasn't paying a whole lot of attention to me at that time. I was trying to just be the father that I thought I needed to be. I was trying to be the husband that I needed to be. And I realized acutely that I had zero self awareness and very minimal emotional intelligence. And that was the thing that made me go on a journey of self discovery. And so, a lot of that included therapy and some counseling. A lot of that included the opportunity to spend more time alone with myself, with my own voice. A lot of it came down to journaling a little bit so I can kind of figure out what my emotions and my thoughts were on a daily or a weekly basis. And so it's one of the most difficult things that you can do is to realize who you are, but you do begin to understand that writing your own story requires you to take a deep dive into yourself. It's almost like going on a first date with somebody, except the person that you're going on the first date with is the person in the mirror. And so it made me a better father. It made me a better husband. But I think big picture, it made me a better man and it made me a better person. And that's what I was really proud about that.
Absolutely. Yeah, going on that journey of self awareness, going on that journey of self discovery is foundational for our growth, right?
Yeah.
Both personally, where we find ourselves in our relationships, not just with our family, but the relationship that we have with ourselves. And
Yeah.
even professionally, right? As dads that perhaps are working, juggling responsibilities, having that level of awareness. Maybe what are your triggers? What are your stressors? How easily are you able to balance the two? And are your emotions from one impacting your emotions on the other, right? What you
Mhm.
do at work, what you bring home from work will impact your personal life and vice versa. What you're bringing into work from home will have an impact on that. So those things have to be in alignment. That's really helpful. You kind of alluded to my next question, but what are some of the steps that you took to get to know your story better? You mentioned therapy. I
Yeah.
think you mentioned journaling as well. Are there any
Yeah.
other things that you did to help you on that journey of self-discovery?
Yeah, I had to be very intentional at those times during those times that I was going through this process. And I said it was after the loss of my father and my brother, and so I was grieving as I was going through this process. So I was intentional about carving out space, rituals, if you would, for just me. And so I would tell your mom, "Hey, I'm going to Barnes and Noble. Hey, I'm going to Starbucks. Hey, I'm going to the park." I really needed some alone time to be away from, a lot of the noise and the activity that was going on in our home. I was coaching basketball at that time, so I needed to get away from that noise. Have been very fortunate to have a good group of friends. Sometimes you just need to like escape that as well, and so that was really the main part for me was carving out time for myself by myself. I don't know if you remember this or not, but when you were going away in college to study abroad, you wanted to get an apartment with five other people. And I kept telling you, man, just get an apartment by yourself because you need to spend more time with yourself. That was really me trying to convey to you what I had been doing for those years leading up to that and how helpful that it was for me. But I think that we just have to be intentional as individuals to understand the journey that you're going on is a journey of self discovery,
Mm-hmm.
and we're talking about writing your own story. If you don't write it, then somebody else is going to write it, right? And oftentimes that could be your kids
Mm-hmm.
because you may think that you're one way, but they're looking at you and understanding, like, nah, you're not the dude that you think you are. We know who you are. So they're writing their story or your story in their mind from a pretty young age. And so that's why it's important. You be the author of your story. Don't let anybody else be that.
Definitely. You brought up the intentionality of spending time alone.
Yeah.
Now, you know, I was I was a daddy's boy. I was self proclaimed daddy's boy. Did you ever feel pressure when you needed to take you knew you needed to take that space to be alone, to spend time alone intentionally? Did you ever feel
Yeah.
pressure from us, from mama, from yourself to perhaps ignore that urge or that desire to spend time with yourself per, because spending time with us, spending time with others was a priority? Was that something that you felt?
I never felt the pressure when it came to your mom, because your mom knew what I was going through,
Yeah.
right? But there were times I felt pressure about spending time with you and Justin at first, but then I began to realize the more that I carved out the intentional time with myself, so I could hear my own voice, so I can hear my
Yeah.
own thoughts, the better that it was making me as a father, the better I was becoming in my role as a man and a leader of our household. I needed that, and so the pressure at the beginning was there, but I was very good about making sure that I carved out the space for you and for Justin because it was important to me. It's what brought me joy, and there were times that I didn't want to necessarily break out and do something without you. But I realized that it was helping me to become a better person. There were a couple of times, I don't know if you remember this or not, but there were a couple of times that I would go away for the weekend. And that was important to me to be able to just go away for the weekend, rent a hotel room down in the Bay Area, go up to the North Coast, because again, it was about growth, both personally, professionally. At that time, I was in the corporate workspace, so I was juggling a lot, and I needed to make sure that I had that time by myself because other than that, life is so busy. If you don't plan it and if you don't stick to it, you'll never have it.
Yeah, everything that you just mentioned, it's a challenge. It's not easy going on that journey of self-discovery, and it might require us to give ourselves some grace, which is the transition to the second piece of what we want to talk about in this conversation. The second way that dads, you can begin to build confidence and become the father that your son needs is to give yourself some grace. Now, that may be easier said than done, but Pops, share for all the fathers listening, why is it important that they do this?
Yeah, first of all, it's important to give yourself a lot of grace because there's a lot of failure when it comes to being a father. And look, it's natural. None of us are perfect, and none of us got a manual on how to raise our son when he came home from the hospital. And so, oftentimes, if you don't give yourself some grace, other people aren't going to give you any grace. I'm a big baseball fan. You're a big baseball fan. And we know that in order to be great in baseball, when it comes to hitting, you have to be successful 3 out of 10 times. That gets you to the Hall of Fame, right? You're a 300 hitter. You could get to the Hall of Fame, but you failed 7 times. So we're going to fail in this journey of fatherhood, and we're going to fail often. And in order to give ourselves some grace, it requires us to be able to not compare ourselves to other people. Don't compare yourselves to other dads, or this guy is good in this area, that guy is great in this area, I'm not so great in this area. And part of that is the head trash that we all tend to carry, right? It's those intrusive thoughts that tell you that you're not worthy, that tell you you're not good enough. And so, there's a lot of fathers that'll watch this video. There's a lot of men who may see this video and they may be like, okay, dude, speak for yourself. Like that's a you thing. And the reality of it is we all have blind spots.
Yeah.
So you could be telling yourself a lot of things, not understanding that could be your blind spot. But giving yourself some grace is so important when it comes to fatherhood because, listen, every dad has that fear. Am I doing enough with my son before it's too late? There's just a fear there. You're responsible for somebody else, when you bring that person home from the hospital, when you realize, that your significant other is pregnant, like everything changes, right? And so if you put so much pressure on yourself to try to be perfect, it's not going to happen. And your son is going to see that you're not perfect, and it's going to allow them to understand that they don't have to be perfect. You just have to be present. And so giving yourself some grace is a big step in fatherhood because it allows you to model a certain type of behavior. It allows you to pause and not just react. It allows you to respond to circumstances and situations that come along because you are able to give yourself some grace and say, my bad, and forgive yourself, but have a short memory and be ready for the next play.
Yeah. You mentioned something, and let me add to what you said because I think giving yourself some grace can also be couched as a practice of self-love. Like practicing self-love is a component of giving yourself some grace. And the reason that that's important is because it's very difficult to love others effectively if you're not loving yourself. Right? If
Indeed.
you're dealing with that head trash that you mentioned, if you're constantly telling yourself you can't, you can't, you can't, what do you think is going to be projected onto those that are relying on you or those that are counting on you or those that are continuously coming to you for inspiration, coming
Yeah.
to you for their sense of love and support, right? But
Yeah.
you've got to be in alignment there first with yourself. You got to love yourself. You got to give yourself some grace in order to pass that on to the next generation.
Yeah, and let me piggyback on something you just said, because as you were talking, I was thinking about, the times that you would go to your friends' houses when you were younger, and then you would come back, and if the house that you went to was a bigger house than we lived in, and you would come home and you'd say, "Oh, they have this, and they have this, and they have this, and they have that." And as a dad, you're thinking like, "Man, I'm out here grinding. I'm trying to, make sure that our household culture is flowing and is positive, and that we're doing good things as a family." And now I'm kind of feeling like, well, man, am I a little bit inadequate? He's coming home and telling me all these great things that they have. And so you remember my response and my reaction to those things was kind of like, okay, well, maybe the next time you go over, they'll let you stay a little longer. Like you could like maybe stay out for the week. And that's me being a little bit butthurt at the time. But then understanding it's just kind of like, yo, these are just your friends. You're going to hang out at their house. It doesn't make me have to feel a particular way. But again, it's that journey of getting to know your story, that journey of self-awareness, and understanding that it's like, if I can give myself some grace, all I need to understand and know is like, I'm doing the best that I can, and I'm doing a good job, and not let anything else get in the way of that. And I think as dads, we do that comparison contrast thing. We got to stop doing that. It's not necessary.
Yeah, well, and that's what I was going to follow up with is why do you feel like it's so hard for dads to give themselves some grace? Is it
Yeah.
societal pressures? Is it familial pressure or, personal pressures? Can you speak on that?
Well, I can speak on it from the standpoint of the era that I grew up in, and what manhood meant at that point in time, right? So, if you weren't supposed to cry if something was going on with you. Now, fortunately, I had a father that he wasn't built that way. He would be like, "Get it out, tell me what's going on, let me know what's on your mind." I appreciated that as I got older because I realized that a lot of my friends didn't have that. You talked about the societal pressures. There was a lot of that back at that time. You man up a little bit. You power through. And look, there's a time and space for all of that. I was an athlete growing up. I was an AAU basketball coach for 10 years, and that was part of the principles that I brought to the game. But the game of life is a little bit different, and so you have to understand the pressures that are going on around you. You have to put up a fence or a field that allows you to shield yourself from all of that, because your journey is your journey and it's unique. It's not like any other dad, it's not like any other parent. And so, yes, there's a lot of peer pressure. We won't even get into technology in terms of what's going on today versus when I was growing up and when you were growing up. Even it's far beyond that. But there are a lot of societal pressures. There's a lot of peer pressures from men. Again, there's the comparison of things and of people around you. Don't do that. That's not necessary. You got to be the father for your son. You got to be your son's hero. You don't have to be anybody else's hero. And that is what we talk about in our group coaching programs, because your son is the one that needs you to show up better for him. And that's what you should be focusing on.
Definitely, definitely. Giving yourself some grace, crucial. For any dads watching this, you got to begin to practice this. The next thing that we want to talk about that can help you, dad, show up better for your son is recognizing your daily digest. What are the things that you are digesting on a daily basis? And so, Pops, the question that I have for you is what are those things that you began to digest on a daily basis that helped you become a better dad?
Yeah, so let's be clear, everybody. We're not talking about food right now. We're not talking about digesting breakfast or lunch and dinner. We're talking about things like your thoughts, right? What are the thoughts that you're digesting? Who are the people that you surround yourself with? Like, what are you thinking about at nighttime before you go to bed? Because most likely you're going to wake up in the morning with that on your mind. So it's important that you start your days on positive notes, that you end your days on positive notes. Not always easy to do, but definitely necessary to do. One of the things, Avery, that became very important to me was to be able to uh, tune out all of the noise because it's very, very difficult, right? We live in a time where we have cell phones, we got PCs, we got our laptop, we got YouTube, we have TikTok, all these platforms, and there's nonstop noise happening. And it can be very easy to get caught up in all of that noise if we don't do things like go on digital detoxes. And that's something that I've learned to do over the past 10 years or so. Sometimes you just got to shut it off. Sometimes you just got to disconnect. Sometimes you don't need to know what's going on in the news, right? We always I've heard that if it bleeds, it leads. So for the most part, whatever you're absorbing when it comes to that type of content, certainly from the news, is going to be negative. And so that's why it's important that you understand what it is that you're digesting. I mentioned going on a digital detox, right? Sometimes we need to go on a people detox
Right.
because if we're around people and their energy is not right, then that impacts you as a father.
Yeah.
It impacts you as a person. So if you're bringing bad energy home with you because you've been surrounded by bad energy, what do you think your household is going to absorb when you get there? And so it's very, very important. Look, people do really four things in their life. They either add, subtract, they multiply, or divide. That's that's basically it. They add, subtract, multiply, or divide. And so what you're digesting is so important in your journey as a parent, but it's also important that your kids, that your sons see you the way you want them to see you. So bring the right energy with you, leave the bad energy outside of the house.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that. You mentioned the importance in terms of your daily digest, and yes, let's clarify: nutrition and your diet. Very,
That's
very
important
important
too.
stuff. Very important. But we're not talking about breakfast. We're not talking about what you ate for lunch, right? No, we're talking about, as you said, your thoughts and the
Yeah.
information that you absorb and the people that you surround yourself with.
Yeah.
And you're right. When you wake up in the morning, this is something that we share with audiences when we speak. I love
Hmm.
sharing this with folks. It's like the first thing that you digest every single morning. It's not food or beverage. It's your thoughts. That is the very first thing that you digest when you wake up, right? Some of us, we wake up, our body or our minds wake up, but our bodies are still asleep, right? So we're just constantly thinking. We're in this kind of like in between state of like, yeah, I'm not getting up, but I'm awake,
Yeah.
right? Those moments right there at the beginning, at the end of those days, at the end of your days, those moments are crucial. What it is that you're feeding your subconscious is ultimately going to impact how you start your day, the energy, the vibe that you have at the beginning and at the end of the day. So yeah, can't express that enough. Being
Yeah.
intentional about absorbing positive news, positive information, positive thoughts. Maybe it comes with some self-reflection and some affirmations that you give yourself. All of those things can be really important in setting up our days. Now,
Yeah.
in terms of, and you started talking about detoxing. All right.
Yeah.
So I want to dive into that a little bit more, whether it's digital detox or people detox, as you said. Did you ever reach a point where you realized you needed to switch up your daily digest? Did you reach a point where you realized some of the things that you were taking in were
Yeah.
not positively impacting you? And then what did you do when you reached that point? Was it immediately that you jumped into action? Did it take you time
Yeah.
to take action? Talk about that.
Well, yeah, it took time. I did realize I needed to switch up and change some things. I had a coach um, maybe about 10 years ago that helped me understand getting up in the morning and reaching for your cell phone is not a good thing.
Mm,
And I did that every single morning when I was in the corporate space because I was waking up with the thought of what emails are waiting for me. I know I wasn't alone. I know I'm not alone. There's going to be many people seeing this video that describes them. Like you go to bed at night and you wake up and you spring into action. So one of the things that I slowly began to change was starting to incorporate some morning affirmations in
Mm,
my life, positive affirmations that I needed to digest at the very, very beginning of my day. Because look, I knew what was waiting for me on some days, and it wasn't necessarily going to be positive, uplifting things when it came to my work life at the time. And so I was trying to equip myself in the morning before I got going. Positive affirmation is something that I do to the day, to this day. I do breathing exercises in the morning. Maybe I'm just getting older and wiser, but it's amazing. The fathers that we've worked with over time, they don't necessarily flow this way. And then when we begin to share with them how transformational it could be, just little baby steps at the beginning to change your mind, right? To change your mindset. Because once you can change your mindset, then you can start to change your tool set and your skill set. Those things follow. And so I love being able to share this with fathers and take them through this process on how they can change their energy from the very time that they wake up in the morning all the way until they go to bed in the evening. But that's when I realized, and I was thankful I had a coach to get me to understand it, because we would go through like, what's your process in the morning? And
mm.
it inevitably always came back to, well, the first thing I do was, the first thing I do was, the first thing I do was, and it was just like I reached for my phone. And if I wasn't looking at emails, then I'd start scrolling and looking at other stuff. And then all of a sudden, my day was stolen from me. My energy was stolen from me. I was letting all these outside things dictate how my day was going to go, what my thoughts were going to be like. And so that's when I realized it. So, yeah, incorporating some positive affirmations, shutting off all the junk is very helpful.
Yeah, one of the things I learned from years of very difficult football conditioning is it's about how you start and it's about how you finish. Those
Mhm.
two things were the most important parts and the most important aspects of practice, starting well and finishing well. And I think I've taken that lesson into my daily life. How we
Mhm.
start, how we finish, being intentional about those two moments again because it sets the tone. So yeah,
Mhm.
that's really good. Thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely.
This is going to bring us to the last thing that you dads can do to show up better for your son. And that's recognizing that the impact you have is very, very real.
Yeah.
Now, in a world that is becoming so digitized, technology is all around us, we can't escape it. I believe that human connection is the way that we will have the greatest impact on those around us, right? So, the question I have for you, Pops, is how did you view your impact as a father? You can answer this from the moment you knew you were becoming a dad, 10 years into the game, 20 years, or now almost 30 years as a father. How
Mhm.
did you view your impact as a dad?
Well, as soon as you came home from the hospital, I recognized that my life would never be the same again, because my responsibilities had just gone to a whole nother level that I could never fathom that it was. And so, um,
That's a
one,
father shift right there.
that is a father shift. That's definitely a father shift. Now, I was very fortunate, and I mentioned this I think earlier in this episode, that I had a father that was very present and accounted for in my life, and I love him for it, because he came from an abusive relationship with my grandfather, a physically abusive relationship, verbally, mentally, emotionally. It was just abuse all around. So he drew a line in the sand. So I knew the impact that he had on my life was the impact that I wanted to have on your life. And so for me, one of the things that was very important as I was raising you and your younger brother was these markers that were telling me that, at this interval you were doing well. And then at the next interval you were doing well. I constantly had the feeling that you were trending in the right direction, right? That you were going to be able, when the time came, to stand on your own two feet, because we were trying to get you to solve problems on your own. We were trying to get you to critically think. And that was the impact that I was trying to have on you. And keep in mind that as an AAU basketball coach, I coached a lot of young cats through the years, and not all of them came from two parent households. They came from good households, but not always with their dad present in their life. And so, I always wanted to have that kind of impact on the young men that I was coaching, because that's the impact that I felt that I was having on you as my biological sons, but I looked at them, as an extension of that. And so it was just important to me to be a father figure, if you will, when I was coaching these young cats in basketball, but knowing the impact that I would have on them and the impact that I would have on you would be major in their lives. And that's proven to be true. I'm so grateful to still have relationships with a lot of the young players. Well, they're not young anymore. They're grown men. A lot of them are fathers now. But when I talk to them or I see them, and it's immediately, hey, coach, how you doing? It's coach this, it's coach that. We recently had dinner with one of your teammates back in New York City when we were speaking in Manhattan. We had dinner with them, and the moment was just surreal for me. I remember, the impact that I was having on y'all when you were second and third grade, fourth grade playing AAU basketball, and now we're at a restaurant in downtown Manhattan having dinner, and I'm looking at the two of you, and besides saying, hey, job well done, coach. These guys turned out well. It made me realize how freaking old I was getting, and so that made that impact even better for me. So yeah, the impact that we have as dads is truly real. We're our kids' first life coaches, and we're their first teachers, and we can never forget that as fathers. And so, if you don't feel like you're having the impact that you should be having, yeah, don't worry about it. Just know what you don't know, and get a little bit of help to get you to get there, because you can get there too.
Absolutely. And we want to guide you through that process. It's one of the reasons why we created a group coaching program called Father Sons Foundations. It's for fathers with sons between the ages of 5 to 12 that are looking for some tools and looking for a resource to help them begin the process of building that legacy relationship, the type of relationship that can weather whatever storms life has, whatever challenges or hurdles that you're going to face. We faced plenty of them, especially as I got into the teenage years and life started lifing, right? Life be lifing, and losses happen and job situations change. All of that stuff takes place. But that's why we created Father Sons Foundations. It's for fathers, again, that are looking to grow that legacy relationship with their sons before the teenage years hit. So if you want
Yeah,
more information about that program, hit the link in the comment section below, and you will be sent to a page that outlines everything that program's about.
yeah. Let me add something to what you just said, Avery, because I think it's important that a lot of dads don't realize that they're losing connection years before that connection is lost, years before those teenage storms hit. And again, that's what our program is about. And that's why we created it, because, fortunately for us, our relationship was built on rock before we started hitting those hard times. And so, our program is really about moving from confusion to confidence, and from disconnection to real conversations. And that's why the program is important. That's why, as a father and son, we decided to do this together. And I'm so happy and I'm so grateful that we're doing something like this, because there's a lot of dads out there that are living on Pain Island, and you don't need to be. There is a way to get to Pleasure Island with the relationship that you have with your son. So, as Avery said, there's a link that you can hit and find out more information about what it is that we do. But this was cool, man. This was a good conversation.
Absolutely. We hope you found this conversation valuable. We're going to be continuing to drop new FatherShift content on a weekly basis, so stay tuned for more of that. But until next time, peace.
Deuces.